Now, just a little background. We decided to, well, first of all, what we have in place is a metadata guideline, not a policy per se, but it is being used as a policy by users. So just to clear that up a bit. We chose that route, one, because it was easier. We wouldn't have to deal with the bottleneck of getting various approvals, etc. And we could hit the ground running. So it would be easy to implement. So that is why we decided to just go ahead with a metadata guideline, get it approved by cabinet, and implement right away. All right? The problem that we were facing is that there were varying sources of information, various accuracy, various qualities, various formats. And it was difficult to use. So what we devised is a way for us to basically improve sharing, improve integration, etc. And what better way to do that more than establishing a standard that everyone could implement and everyone could use. All right? So it would make it easier. So we decided to develop or adopt rather a metadata standard. Now this basically came from our chapter 2 of the National Land Policy, which was basically a guide for the development of a national GIS spatial plan. That was a part of the National Land Policy, that we had to come up with a plan in how to address geospatial data, management, collection, dissemination, etc. And from that, we decided to run with the whole concept of a NSDI, a National Spatial Data Infrastructure. And part of that, we know, is the standards. So we went right away to looking at the standards, and one of those were the metadata standard. Now, this was based on the lack of metadata. We had a lot of data, but we didn't have any metadata to go along with them, or very few rather. Not a lot of people knew of it, not a lot of people cared about it. It was just a second task, something you do after, and nobody ever got around to doing. So we figure, let's get this into the organizations as a standard and get people mandated to do the work. Now, there was, well, probably around 2007 thereabout, there's buzz in Jamaica, using GIS data for practically everything. Now, what really led this buzz is that the government realized the usefulness of the information, and so they were mandating their different divisions, etc., to make use of this tool. But getting the data is one thing. How do we use it? We don't know what quality it is. We don't know when it was collected. We cannot trust our data, say, hey, let's go and collect it again. So there were a lot of duplication of efforts. We found that National Works Agency was collecting roads, National Land Agency collecting roads. So we have 2 or 3 or 4 roads data sets, and nobody knows which one is which at some point and which one to trust. So that is some of the problems that we were facing. There were unmet need for a more comprehensive integration process. So we needed the data sets to not just be standalone data sets in organizations, but for them to actually become useful, to integrate them and that we can get the most out of it. And basically to protect our investment. We spend millions of dollars on collecting different information every year, whether it is for one project or the other, or whether it is for a project that runs for a period of time. But there's a lot of money involved, and we decided, how do we protect this investment? That somebody down the line doesn't say, all right, we don't know anything about this data, how it was collected, we can't trust it, let's do it again. All right, we're wasting resources, and we wanted to stop that. Now, how we went about developing our policy is that we took a joint-up approach, and this is the approach that we take most of the time when we want to get things done. And this is actually meaningful through our Land Information Council. This is really the driving force behind most of our operations. If we want to get anything done, we do it through the LICJ. You want data? Go through the LICJ. You want to know what exists? Go through the LICJ. So that was really the steering ship. So we went through a lot of consultations with the different agencies, because the Land Agency, the Land Information Council, is really made up of different agencies, about 50. Rural physical planning, people from environment, people from private companies. Everyone and anyone can join the council if you're interested in GIS. All right? And so that was the easiest source for us to get the information out to. So we went to them and said, this is what we want to do, this is why. And a lot of convincing had to be done for them to see the importance of it. And it's through that we went through different consultations and was able to develop this guideline. Now, basically what we did was to take the ISO standard, which is the international standard, and basically align ours to it. We looked at it saying what was pertinent to us as a country and to select those mandatory fields. Now, in 2006, that was submitted to Cabinet and it was approved. It's a 13-point guideline that basically spoke to how it should have been implemented, what are to be established, etc. Now, these are some of the things that the metadata guidelines spoke to. The adoption of the standard, as I said before, what were the core elements. It mandated that we develop a data inventory so we knew what existed. And from that, we could identify what are the gaps, what are some of the quality that we have, where do we need to start, where we need to get more structured, etc. We prioritized what data sets were to be what data sets were supposed to be prioritized for metadata creation. And those would be those that are either more highly requested, highly used, or they were seen as the fundamental data for moving forward. Another thing that he spoke to were what are the tools that should be used. And for this, we selected our catalog because that was the platform that most, if not all, agencies had at the time. So if it already existed, we don't need to recreate the wheel. They have it in the office. Now all they need to do is use it. So that was selected. The metadata availability and access, it spoke to that. How do you go about getting metadata? What are some of the things that you need to put in place? The creation of a national metadata clearinghouse, and I'll speak more to that further on. Now, these are the elements that we chose: identification, data quality, spatial organization, etc. And those are the things that we thought anybody taking up a data set should be able to know exactly what that data is about just by looking at these fields. They can basically assess it. We don't want a situation where, in cases where you have to buy the data, you buy something and then afterwards you realize that's not what you wanted, or it doesn't cover the area that you want, or it's not as in-depth as you thought. Now, what the metadata will give you is all of that information right up front. So you know if you want to use this one, you need to collect it elsewhere, or you need to keep looking. So those were the selections. The guideline also spoke to the different approaches that we should take, and we insisted on an organizational approach. And basically this was because we thought that if we did not have the buy-in of the heads of organizations, etc., then it wouldn't get anywhere. So the first thing we asked them to do is to build management support by doing presentations, circulating documents, flyers, etc. Get them to understand the benefits of metadata, why it is important, why do we need to do this, why do they need to allocate the resources to it. That was at the beginning. That is what we had to do. Then we had to share the stories. Those that have gone before us, implemented it, what are the benefits that they see, right? And some agencies were able to put forward some cost-benefit analysis. For example, the National Land Agency, they were able to do that to say, we saved X amount of money based on this. And that, to me, brought home the whole situation of why it is important to carry this on. The other thing that we did was to ask them to redesign the map production workflow and simplify metadata collection. And basically what we said is that metadata is to be collected at every stage of your data collection and management. So this is not just one person sitting in a room and doing all of these metadata records. Everybody from inception of that data set is supposed to be collecting metadata. So you go out there, you collect the data, you need to create the data, the metadata for it. When was it collected? What kind of conditions was it collected in? What type of instrument? What coordinate system? That sort of information, right? And then when you bring it in-house, again, the person who converts the file, cleans up, etc., needs to document that as well. The person who uploads it to a data set. So it keeps going. It's a process. And that is what we had to pass on to different organizations. Because when you're approaching somebody and say, let's do metadata, you need to do it and this is why. Okay, but I have 300 and odd data set. When is that going to get done? So you basically have to change the whole concept, the whole culture of the organization in terms of how they think about metadata, how they think about data, how they think about everything that has to do with it.